Sopdet, the Sharp One. This is a very, very ancient deity who is associated with the Sopdet star, which of course she is the personification of. And through that she's connected to the inundation of the Nile and the New Year as well. She was venerated in the cultures of North Africa, particularly the Kemetic and later Egyptian, though her influence would go far beyond these two civilizations. In those cultures, she was venerated at her cult center, which was dedicated to her per Sopdet. Her period of worship extended from the predynastic period all the way through the Greco-Roman invasion. Her consort was Sah, who was also called a Sar and represented the Orion star constellation. Their offspring was Sopdu, who was the personification of the planetary body Venus. And Sopdet herself is seen as an Astral Goddess. She became the personification of the Sopdet star, or the dog star as it was later known. And this star was the most important of stars, not only to the ancient Kemites and Egyptians, but many other cultures. It is the brightest of all the fixed stars. It is the brightest of all stars and has a significance in many cultures. But in Kemetic Beliefs, this was the forming of their astrological foundation of their religious system, delineating the rhythms and cycles by which they lived, and establishing a very mysterious connection with humanity, and also the idea of divine knowledge. The heliacal rising of the star came at the time of the inundation of the Nile, and thus the start of the Kemetic and Egyptian New Years. And as a goddess of that inundation, she was thus associated with fertility. She later became linked to the pharaoh in a very specific way, and later would be seen as a pharaoh's guide into the afterlife. In the mythology of the Netters, who would later be called gods by the Greeks, the Sopdet star is identified as their solar home, the source not only of these enlightened beings, but this was also viewed as the ultimate source of knowledge, and the destination of all divine people would be to arise to that level and ascend to this star. This star is unique in the sense that it can be seen from almost every inhabited region of Earth's surface, and it thus became a very important celestial body to many, many peoples. This celestial body was known to be sacred to both the Freemasons and the Order of the Eastern Star, hidden or secretive societies that still operate to this day. In terms of the goddess, even as early as the first dynasty, she was known as the bringer of the new year and the Nile flood, because Sopdet appeared in the sky each year, and the Nile generally started to flood and begin the fertilization of the land, and thus the ancient Kemites connected the two events to the star. So Sopdet took on the aspects of a goddess and not just the star, and thus her connections through the inundation and fertility spread to further veneration throughout the civilization, and she became a source not only of fertility or renewal, but also enlightenment. The flood and rising of Sirius also began to mark the ancient Kemetic New Year, and thus she was seen as the goddess of New Year, but also the goddess of new beginnings. She is typically depicted as a nude figure wearing a conical white crown, which represented Lower Kemet. That crown is surmounted or topped by a star. And later in Egyptian mythology, she becomes to a degree somewhat synchronized with the goddess known as Aset, or later known as Isis. During the Old Kingdom, she was a massively important goddess, not only equated to the annual flood, but served as a guide of deceased pharaohs, assisting the dead pharaohs on their journeys into the underworld. It was said that she could teach them to be more powerful or to transcend and join the gods themselves. From the Middle Kingdom, she is often seen as a deity who held up part of Nu, the sky or firmament, along with the goddess of beauty, Hathor. In her role as a guide, specifically in the afterlife for the pharaoh, she was seen to allow him to fly into the sky, to join the gods. showing him the godly roads in the field of reeds, and helping him become one of the immortal stars. She is thought herself to live in the horizon, encircled by the duat. And the significance of this deity, although her veneration has waned, the importance of the Sopdet star, the star she embodies, has never waned. It is still seen to this day as the sacred star by many other cultures and belief systems. The veneration of this goddess thus still continues, although by different names. The ultimate source that we see, the brightest star in the sky, the source of divine knowledge, and the marker of cycles, is still the Sirius star, and thus we represent and venerate this goddess Sopdet, who is its physical or godly representation.